Srimad Bhagavatam program. And in this program, devotees present the verses from Srimad Bhagavatam and their realization. Currently, the theme is Prayers of Personified Vedas. It's from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 87, from the verse 1 to 50. These are very, very wonderful prayers of Vedas. And today we have a very wonderful devotee presenting the verses and her realization. Today we have Shikha Mataji with us. Hare Krishna, Shikha Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Over to you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. We are going to start with invocation prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Iti Namine, Namaste Saraswate Deve, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavati Paschatya Deshtarine, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advait Gadadhar, Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda, Mukam Karoti Vachalam, Pangum Langayate Girim, Yat Kripatam Aham Vande, Shri Guru Dina Taranam, Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjan Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. So thank you, Veena Mataji, Jaya Subhadra Mataji, and all the senior devotees for giving me this opportunity to actually learn through this process, the prayers of personified Vedas. Like Veena Mataji said, beautiful prayers, and I'm a neophyte devotee, so please apologize if I make any mistake. So like Mataji was saying, these are coming from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 87, a beautiful dialogue which we're going to discuss today. So sometimes when we are listening or reading a book, it helps us if we know a little bit more about the context and the author or the subject who is speaking. So in that spirit, I actually wanted to bring here text 41 because there is a dialogue which is happening between the personified Vedas and Lord, Supreme Lord. And it is so beautiful because it helps us in really appreciating the greatness of personified Vedas. So how it happened was while the Vedas were finishing their prayers, they talked about how Lord Brahma and even the heavenly gods are not able to fully describe the Supreme Personality and the humility which the personified Vedas have. And they said that we are so down as compared to the Lord Brahma that we have no qualification. And really liked what Lord Narayana said. And it really helps us to see how the absolute divine sees the personified Vedas. And what he mentioned was that the vision which the Vedas have is a more sublime vision than even what the Brahma and other demigods have. So here what we are learning is the importance which Lord Narayana gives to the Vedas. And another important thing which the personified Vedas are talking about is that even Lord doesn't know what his glories are because he's limitless. But what they talked about at the end really touched my heart. And I actually highlighted that here in blue. And I think that applies to all of us devotees as well. And they said that we can never describe your glories endlessly, but we can perfect our existence by just declaring that you are the true topic of the Vedas. And I think the learning for me as well is that it is hard to comprehend and understand the absolute Lord, but we all can perfect our existence by acknowledging the Supreme Personality of Godhead and being devoted in his devotional service. A question also comes, and I think we were reading that in our Bhakti Shastri class as well, that Vedas are tainted with three modes of material nature. So what is really Vedas talking about? And this last shloka of the prayers is also concluding that the Vedas really talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his personal form, his qualities, his pastimes, and his powers. So hopefully this at least sets the stage for us to see how elevated the stage is for the personified Vedas, and how Lord also is directing us towards reading these scriptures. So the prayers actually are in Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are seeing actually these stories being retold multiple times in the succession, in the disciplic succession. So we all know that Sud Goswami was the first one to recite some of these prayers and stories to the sages of Naimisharanya. And in this particular chapter, the chapter starts with a question from Parikshit Maharaj, who is the grandson of Arjuna, to his guru Sukdev Goswami. And we're going to talk about that question. And really that question is that our mind is material. And even like, if we think about Vedas, maybe sometimes we consider that just like words and books, and sometimes we then think it's material, and we say, okay, these are vibrations and these are just words and material sounds. So the question, the sincere question from Parikshit Maharaj to Sukdev Goswamiji was that when our mind is material, the words are material, the sound is material, how can Veda describe the absolute Lord and achieve that level of transcendence? And then he also wanted to inquire, I think for all of our benefits, do Vedas highlight whether God has a personal form, or do Vedas propound the impersonalist theory? And that was the question. And when he asked that question, Sukdev Goswamiji said that the similar question was asked by Narad Muni from Sri Narayan Rishi as well. And then this goes into another layer, because the same discussion topic was also with four Kumaras, where Sanandan Ji actually gave this knowledge to the residents of Janloka, which are very highly elevated souls. And then that brings our topic to the stories of glorification of Lord Vishnu through the prayers of personified. So we are seeing that how these stories are being retold, and where the lineage is. And then a question comes in, is that how did Maharaj Parikshit all of a sudden in this chapter started thinking about the Vedas? So we have to go back a chapter earlier. And what we are seeing in this earlier chapter was that Lord Krishna had actually visited the village of Mithila. And there what he had done was he met two sincere devotees who were in Krishna consciousness. And one was the king, and the other one was a Brahmana. And what he did was he gave both of them transcendental knowledge, and then he directed them, advised them to go and read Vedas to learn about the absolute truth, and then also to learn about the rituals. So that actually made Parikshit Maharaj ask that question about the Vedas, because he was getting that from the previous chapter and previous story which Sukdev Goswamiji was reciting. And why are these prayers sang for glorification of the God? So this chapter talks about it, and there are various places in Canto 1 where we talk about some of this, that when the dissolution of the whole cosmic creation happens, the entire energy and the whole creation actually comes in a nucleus form, and it enters into the body of Garbhodayakshai Vishnu. And if we see that image, like he is sleeping in that Vishnu mudra. So Lord actually is in a sleeping state for a very long time. And when then it comes time for creation, at that time, all these Vedas personified come around the Lord and they chant these prayers, which we are going to be reading, which we are reading about. So personally, I feel so blessed to be associated with all of you, that not knowing I got a chance to read these wonderful prayers, which are chanted to the Lord by the personified Vedas. And I mean, the Vedas are so long, and what is really the essence of these prayers? So these prayers are a list of 28 shlokas or texts, which have been sung by the 28 most important Shrutis. And really, there are certain key messages from these prayers. And one is that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the question comes, which we're going to discuss in a little bit more detail today, that is anyone equal to or greater than Lord Krishna? And the prayers are actually answering that question as well for us, that no one is equal or greater than the absolute God. Then they talk about the 6 opulences which the Lord possesses. And he is the one who can deliver us from the clutches of the Maya. The prayers also talk about how something which Prabhupada has been telling us right from the first book, Science of Self-Realization, which we read. I think that was the first book which we read with Shikha Mataji and Satya Sai Prabhu. And I think for the first time, I started reading this, what Prabhupada is saying, what the prayers of personified Vedas are also saying, that we are all part and parcel of the Lord. And just by being parcel of the Lord, we are eternally joyful and full of knowledge. But because of the 3 modes, we have this covering and we have forgotten ourselves. And why reading these prayers of personified Vedas, why we should be reading about these prayers? Because they are, and I think that's the message which Lord Krishna gave to the king and to the Brahmana as well, is that it is going to help us conditioned souls to understand Krishna and be engaged in devotional service. So then the question came in my mind that when we are saying personified Vedas, what do really Vedas encompass? And it's something which we actually studied in some details in our Bhakti Shastri class when we started reading Bhagavad Gita, as to how Bhagavad Gita has elements of both Shruti and Smriti. I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but basically this particular chart gives us the spectrum of what the Vedic knowledge consists of, Shrutis and Smritis. And these prayers which we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam are actually coming from the Puranas, which are considered the 5th Vedas. So also what was very beautiful, and I know we all do chanting, we all do our regular prayers, but this one was very powerful for me. So the first stanza of the prayers actually starts with these words, Jaya Jaya. And what the meaning here is so beautiful, because what it means is that, Lord, please reveal your super excellence to us. And it also means that we are showing our reverence and we are showing our joy. I think that's really nice, that joy. I mean, reading these prayers gave me so much joy, just understanding this one. And I had heard from a lot of people around how powerful Srila Prabhupadaji's purports are. And I was never able to appreciate that. I mean, I could appreciate it from my mind, but never felt it from the heart. But without Srila Prabhupada's purport, it was so hard to understand these. So my reverence to Srila Prabhupada as well, because that really reminded me and made me realize that how great of a spiritual master he is. And then this purport actually goes into almost I felt like Krishna is doing his pastime with the prayers of personified Vedas, just in the similar way he used to do pastimes with the gopis. So then Lord asks this question, but how do I reveal my super excellence to you all? And the personified Vedas are just so smart, actually. And then they said that just by mercifully destroying the ignorance which we all living beings have. So by that, if you destroy our ignorance and help us get attracted to your lotus feet, that was a request from them. One way to show excellence, his excellence. And then they again talk to the Lord again talks to them and says, but how are we going to Maya? Why do you all oppose Maya? Maya is so good. And then I really liked what the personified Vedas said. And what they talked about was that because of Maya, the individual souls are bewildered because of three modes. And they forget their own identity and start relating themselves to their material bodies. And what was even more beautiful is the next part, because what they're now talking about is that why is it bad for three modes? And even if we realize that we're just a body, because anywhere where then Krishna is not there, it's not the real thing. So they talked about that once we get tainted by three modes, even the Lord would not manifest in the presence. We would not be able to see the God that time. So, and then God again says, okay, but you're calling me Ajita. How do you know that I'm Ajita and I cannot be conquered by Maya, just like Brahma got defeated by Maya? And then here, Vedas also help us to understand that the faith which they have in the Lord, and they talk about the perfection of the opulences which the Lord has. And the prayer, the last part of the prayer again talks about, and I think that was another learning for me here is, and prayers are saying that very beautifully, that just being, if we can destroy the ignorance caused by Maya, that's not enough. So two things need to happen. One is the ignorance which is brought by Maya has to be destroyed. And second thing is we have to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord by devotional service. Only then can we see the personal features of the Lord. I have been on several paths, and prayers of personified Vedas are so beautiful. I highly recommend it. I mean, those 28 verses explain you so many things, from how the creation happened, is Lord in the personal form, what happens, what is the status of demigods, what are the five koshas which we have, what is the jiva, what is the soul, what is the position of spiritual master. They talk about what happens if we forget the real purpose of our life, and what is real purpose of our life. And not only this knowledge, but every verse also has very sincere prayers, which we would not be able to cover. But this was a doubt in my mind always, that is Lord Krishna the ultimate, or why do we have so many gods and demigods and Vedas? Actually, this is whether Veda's polytheistic view. Do we worship one God? And if it is only one God, why do we have so many Vedic mantras which talk about Indra is a god, and Agni is a god, and Shiva is a god? And sometimes it brings a lot of confusion as well. And here, prayers of personified Vedas are explaining it very beautifully. And they're saying that it's not like, and sometimes I think when we read Brahman and we think it's it's effulgence, it's impersonal realization. But Vedas are really very clear about this one. And what they're talking about is that there is no deity, whether it's Indra or Agni, which can fulfill the unique role, which is the role of being the greatest of all and being the maintainer of everything. And even when they were talking about how creation happened and how Lord Vishnu actually created all the demigods and how they did not have that energy to even conduct the duties which they were supposed to, and then how Lord Vishnu actually entered as super soul in everyone's heart. So Vedas very clearly talk about that no other demigod possesses all the powers which Lord Vishnu has. In fact, Lord Vishnu is the one who has granted all this energy so that they can perform their duties. And Lord is eternally unchanging. And Prabhupada ji explains it very nicely with clay analogy. So out of clay, we can make so many things. We can make pots and pans and paintings. But if we go back to the root or the substance, no matter what transformation happens, the origin is clay. In the same way, the origin for this creation is Lord Krishna. It's Lord Vishnu. And Gajendra prayers also teach us the same thing. He is cause of all causes. So, and sometimes we say that Prakriti created this creation, and prayers are beautifully describing how Prakriti is also the external energy of the Lord, and Prakriti goes through transformation, but Lord, who is Purusha, is unchanged and is the creator of Prakriti as well. I'm just going to do a time check. And I think now that we know so much about this one, what prayers are directing us to is to be sincere on this path. And if we are wise, then we will be worshiping the Lord and always remembering his lotus feet. And the devotional service has a lot of purifying effects. I would not be going into all these details here, but prayers talk about how a lotus stays in water, but it is untouched. So same way we could be in this world, which is going through all these three modes, but sinful activities would not even adhere to us. And people who are sincere on this path actually are relieved of all the sufferings which are caused by ignorance. And eternally, materially and spiritually, because God will take care of all needs. So wise people always worship the holy feet of the Lord. And power of bhakti yoga. So, I mean, these prayers answered so many things for me on this path, because when I came in Krishna consciousness, I felt the same thing. I felt that maybe this is too immature process, because they're only chanting here, and you do chanting and yagnas and so many breathing practices and all that. So prayers have actually beautifully answered that also, about the 5 koshas, which we may not be able to cover today. But here they're talking about they're warning us that do not take bhakti yoga as a relative or a minor process, like I was thinking. It's not sentimental. It does not lack maturity. And here they are talking about Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, where Rup Goswami is talking about that how if we have tasted even one drop of bhakti, we will lose the taste for all these material desires. And the prayers are actually talking about here what Krishna says about bhakti yoga, that if we remember him once with a pure heart, our impurities become pure. If we remember him once, we don't have to follow vows, and we become, even if we were not following vows, we become strict followers of vows. And even if we remember him once, we become desireless, and our only desire becomes to serve him. And just by remembering him once, we get all the knowledge of the Vedas. And we read that in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita as well. And he's talking about how these souls are very, very, very rare. So these souls who are, and we did read in chapter 2 in our Bhakti Shastri class about self-realized people and how all their hankerings go away and how they're situated in Lord's devotional service, how they use all their energies and all their resources for Lord as well. And here also they talk about how powerful the association with saintly Vaishnavas are. And I can actually relate to it because I had no idea about these prayers. And it is only Vaishnava's mercies that I could read these prayers. Prabhupadaji's mercies that I could understand a little bit of these and be able to talk through some of this. So I'm going to end it here and thank you for this opportunity, and my apologies if I made a mistake here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I really wish there was more time. It's so beautiful. Mataji, your presentation was just so beautiful. And you so nicely started with what is the essence of these prayers and what are the final prayers and how you just gave us the layers of these prayers. Some of the very beautiful points that I really like was reading these prayers gives so much joy, and we could really see that joy in you. So very wonderful. And finally, the way you ended it with the power of bhakti, just by hearing Krishna's name once, telling his name once, it makes everything impure as pure, and one who never takes vow will take a vow. I can totally relate to that. I think that's how it's happened for us, right? So very deep class, very beautifully presented. Thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful class.
One more thing, Mataji. I mean, always I would read about Krishna consciousness and you feel, oh my God, I have to do these things. And we sometimes, I mean, at least I took it as a burden sometimes, or something hard and something which doesn't happen naturally. But I think while I was reading these, there was just an ecstasy, which is effortless, but I think Krishna reciprocates. And that's the power of these personified Vedas, that you don't do anything. Just like Krishna said, that they have more sublime vision than even the Lord Brahma. I could experience a little bit of it, and it was beautiful. Thank you, Mataji, and thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Mataji. That was really beautiful. With that, devotees, thank you all very much for joining the BhagavatSanga program today. We will see you all next week. Hare Krishna.